Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Loss of Distance Education. This is MBF3C, Grade 11, College Preparation Mathematics, and my name is Marvin. Welcome to the 21st class of the term. My contact information listed on the screen there is marvin.osmond@nnecschools.org, or you can call or text 807-738-2031. Yesterday, we were talking about vehicles and purchasing a vehicle. We're going to move on um, today from there. Yesterday, we looked at depreciation, what depreciation is, which is how much a vehicle decreases in value over time. And then we also looked at fuel economy and what fuel economy is. And we did some examples yesterday where we looked at, sample problem 10.2 we did yesterday. We looked at what the resale value would be of a $64,000 vehicle over a period of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 10 and 20 years, and how much the vehicle will be worth after each of those individual years. The biggest drop in price will be in the first year, and then the second year won't drop as much, but it's going to be quite a bit lower. And it's going to keep going down until the vehicle is virtually worthless after about 20 years or so. And so the longer you keep it, the less the vehicle is worth. So it's kind of the opposite of houses. So if you own a house, for example, in a city like Toronto or Winnipeg or one of the largest centers, Thunder Bay, when you buy a house, it tends to go up in value. Real estate is what some people call it an investment. So real estate is worth more tomorrow than it is today. Usually, not always. The land itself is what's valuable. The house may become, as the house gets older, of course, it's going to need more work as well. But if you maintain a house well and you look after things and you fix things when it needs to be fixed, house can be 100 years old and still be okay to live in, as long as it's kept up to date and you keep maintaining it and fixing things as they break. Whereas a vehicle, it doesn't matter how well you look after a vehicle, 100 years from now, it's going to be worthless. And it's not going to be worth anything. So there's the difference. So houses do appreciate, we call it, not depreciate. Um, but we're talking about vehicles right now. We'll talk about houses a bit later. So we also looked at fuel consumption in sample problem 10.3. If you drive, let's say 800 kilometers to Thunder Bay and back, uh, your vehicle burns about 5.6 liters per 100 kilometers, and it costs about $1.49, or sorry, $1.47.9 per liter. And then you can do the calculations and figure out how much it would cost you to go to Thunder Bay and back. So the example that we worked out yesterday is on the screen right now. Again, blue is new, red is the solution to those blue problems. Uh, this material is saved as a Word document. I can save it as a PDF if I need to as well. So if you are listening and you don't want to come back and watch the video, which you're more than welcome to do, but if you don't want to watch the video itself and you just want to see the solutions on paper or on screen, you can contact me and I can email you a copy. And if you're not able to accept the email or you don't have the download or the internet to do so, we can arrange so that it can be emailed to the Learning Center. Or if the Learning Center doesn't have the capacity to download the file as well, then we can put it on a jump drive and have it sent to you. And you should have it in a matter of a couple of days. So it's up to you. So right now, we're going to finish up lesson number 10 today. That it puts an end to unit number 2. So units 1 and 2 are now completed, or will be complete at the end of today's class. So if you want a copy of that, we can easily put those 2 units. The lessons themselves, plus my new notes and the solutions to sample problems that I've added. that might help you with some of the support questions and key questions. Again, support questions you don't need to submit for marking. Key questions you do. So of course I can't help you with the key questions, but I can help you with support questions. I can walk you through it, and we can even, do a Zoom meeting, or we can do FaceTime. We can just do a phone conversation, whatever works best for you. So there's multiple ways of getting in contact and getting your work done. Okay. But again, it's important that you try to stay on top of your work and get it done as quickly as possible. So once we've completed the lesson, so today, for example, will be completed lesson 10. So if you've not done the first 10, then what I would suggest you do, because this will be fresh in your mind right now, do lesson number 10 and then go back and finish up any lessons that you haven't completed. If you've only done one or two lessons, then send those two out. I can mark and get it back to you as quickly as possible, usually within a day or so. That way we can, if you're making any mistakes, um, we can stop you making the same mistake over and over and over. Okay? And it also eliminates the possibility that you may lose the lessons, or you may misplace them, or you may spill something on them. Any number of things could happen. So it's best that you get it out to me as quickly as possible. And, if you get it back and you get 90% in the first lesson, that builds confidence as well. And then it gives you some motivation to get moving on to the next lesson. Okay. So today we're going to move on. We're going to talk a little about buying new and used vehicles. So the difference and what are the advantages and disadvantages of each of the two methods. So lots of questions involved in the process of buying a car. But the first question would be, should you buy used or new? And it might be just personal preference, but it might come down to the purpose of the vehicle. So we're going to lay out the advantages of buying a new vehicle and the advantages of buying an old vehicle, new versus old. So the advantage of buying new will be a disadvantage of buying old and vice versa. Okay. So in other words, we're going to look at the pros and the cons of each method of buying a vehicle. Okay. So let's say you want to buy a new vehicle. So what are the advantages? Well, a couple of things. One, it can be made to order. So when you walk into a dealership and you want a vehicle, you can say, I want this model at 2025. I drive a Honda Civic, so I'll just use that as an example. I want a 2025 Honda Civic. I want it to be gray in color, and I want these particular features. So I want the adaptive cruise control. I want the lane keep assist. I want the backup camera. So you can list all of the features that you want. I want a stereo system. Okay, so I can spec a car. So I can specify exactly what I want, and then they can reach out to the factory to see if there's any available. And because they are a dealership, let's say a Honda dealership, there's one in Thunder Bay, there's one in Kenora, there's several in Winnipeg. So there are dealerships in all the major centers. So if there's not one in, say, let's say I'm buying my vehicle in Kenora, and if there's not that particular model in Kenora, they can check Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, and if they have the model there, they can have it shipped to Kenora for me. So you can pick what you want. Again, colors, interior, exterior, there's all kinds of different things you can have on a vehicle. The advantage is it's not used. It's brand new. Okay. Never been mistreated. Okay. Doesn't smell funny because maybe people have smoked in the vehicle or whatever. It may smell a little bit because a new car has a new car smell. It's that leathery smell. So that might be in the vehicle for a while, but that's some people call that a pleasant smell. Okay. So there's no wear and tear in the vehicle. um, Probably with a clean history, it hasn't been involved in an accident. So the only place it's been driven is from the factory to a truck, off the truck and into the dealership, usually. Okay. So when I bought my last vehicle, I think there's like 8 kilometers on the vehicle. That was it. 8 kilometers. So that was getting it, you know, on some kind of a container, depending on how it comes by truck, by rail, by boat, whatever. So very few kilometers. So I know that it is been not been mistreated yet. There's a warranty on it as well. Usually, most vehicles have a 3 year, 60,000 kilometer warranty. So 3 year, 60,000 kilometers, they are assuming that you are going to drive about 20,000 kilometers per year. Now, so it says 3 years or 60,000 kilometers, whichever comes first. So it won't go beyond 3 years, but 60,000 kilometers, if you drive more than 20,000 kilometers a year, and let's say you drive 30,000 kilometers, so now after 2 years, you're at the 60,000 kilometers, well, now the warranty is over. So it's over whichever comes first. Again, as I said before, you can purchase an extended warranty, but you're going to pay money for that. And you can go up to maybe 7 years where you might end up paying several $100s per year for the additional warranty. Now, the warranty gives you peace of mind. Peace of mind knowing that if something major like an engine or a transmission were to go at no fault of your own. Now, if you forget to put oil in it, and the engine blows, that's not covered under warranty because you didn't follow the procedure that you should have. So keep that in mind. But if you bring it to the dealership, have the oil changed every time it's supposed to be changed, and the engine were to blow up, then that will be covered under the warranty. If not, then that could cost you upwards $20,000 depending on the vehicle. Okay, so it can be expensive. So some people like the peace of mind. I'll pay a bit extra. Engine shouldn't go. Transmission shouldn't go in that period of time. But if it does for some unknown reason, then at least I'm covered. As long as it wasn't my fault. You also get the latest gizmos. So every generation of cars has something new added to it. So if you go back 20 years, well, actually, I bought my first vehicle in 1990. So 90, 2000, so 2000, so 35 years ago. There was no adaptive cruise control. There was no backup cameras. Okay. So essentially you had back then you got a air conditioning. That was the big thing you had to have then. Now that's pretty much standard now. Air conditioning pretty much on every vehicle. But since then, there's been light years um, in advancements in vehicle technology. So there's so many things added to a vehicle now. If you go back to like the 1970s and you were to find an old truck and you pop the hood, look at the engine, you would say, wow, there's a lot of room in there. You could probably get in there, sit down and work on the engine and maybe even close the hood. There's tons of room in there. But if you pop the hood on a new vehicle today and you look inside, every inch of space is taken up pretty much. So there's no room because there's so much technology and so many things added inside of the hood that there's no room left anymore. So in some cases, just changing the battery, for example, might take you an hour to do. Whereas in the old days, there was a battery there, you unhook the two oh, I forget what you call them, and the connecting rods, the terminals, disconnect the two terminals, pop out the battery, pop in a new one, connect the two terminals, where you go. Took you 5 minutes. Now sometimes that takes an hour or two to do because sometimes they're hidden. There's things on top of them you got to take off first. So it's getting more and more complicated. And they keep getting more and more complicated as well. So the goal is someday that vehicles will be self-driving. They're getting pretty close because we have the adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist. They don't recommend you keep your hands off the wheel, but that's eventually where we are headed. Problem we have in Canada, of course, as opposed to the southern US, is we have snow. We have cold weather, so batteries don't do well in cold weather. Snow on the road, so it's if you have a camera and radar and they can't see the yellow center line and the white line on the outside, they can't see those, then the lane keep assist doesn't work. There are a lot of safety features on vehicles now. Some of them have become law. So I think, like I said, the backup cameras are pretty much mandatory now. There's tire pressure monitoring systems on them. Um, so you want to keep your tires at the same pressure and then recommend the tire pressure so that the vehicle is most stable. So if you have one tire that's lower than the rest, the vehicle may handle differently than it should. It may pull to one side. There are a whole bunch of things that can go wrong. So you should be checking your tire pressure regularly. So now a lot of vehicles will have a tire pressure monitoring system. And if one of your tire pressure is low, you'll get an indication inside of the console on your dash and it will say low tire pressure. So that's one of the safety features now. But again, there's lots more. Uh, the blind spot monitoring. So in the mirrors, there's usually an indicator if there is a vehicle in on your left side or right side in your blind spot, which is kind of right behind you over your left shoulder, that if you look in the rear view mirror, you probably don't see. That's why you do a shoulder check when you do a shoulder check, you're taking your eyes off the road briefly. So now they've added these um, warning systems in the mirror, so you just have to look at the mirror and it will tell you if there's something in the blind spot. Also now, if you want to change lane, because they have the lane keep assist, to change lane, you have to put on your signal light. If not, if you try to, you can go over the line, but if you try, you'll get that vibrating motion where it wants to keep you in the lane you're in. So you have to put on the signal light to change lanes. Okay, so those are some of the features that you can, right now, they are, some of them are optional, but more and more vehicles have those features now. So typically what happens when they become popular over a course of 3 or 4 or 5 years, they all become on, you get them on any vehicle you buy. So right now, like I said, rear view camera pretty much on every vehicle, lane keep assist, pretty much every vehicle that's built today, adaptive cruise control, pretty much every vehicle that's built today will have those features. Okay. And as they become more and more popular and you put them on all of the vehicles, they're less expensive because it's economy of scale. So if they're on every vehicle, you can cut the price uh, as if, if you're only on 3 or 4 vehicles, then, you got to add them to 3 or 4 vehicles. It's going to cost more. Um, Today, too, new vehicles have emission standards. So there has to be a minimum standard for emissions. So vehicles can't, in the old days, back in the 70s and 80s, uh, vehicles had the big tailpipes and burning lots of gas and black smoke coming and polluting the air. So now they have emission standards and they have higher fuel efficiency. So vehicles in the 70s and 80s burned a lot of gas, a lot of fuel. Whereas today, they're getting much better at fuel economy. So, uh, as I said, I can go to Dryden in my vehicle on about 5.6 liters of fuel. Okay, that's not a lot of fuel to go that distance in a car. Okay, so they are getting better. And another choice now is we're going to hybrids and electric vehicles. So electric vehicles are straight electric. They have to be charged, just like any rechargeable battery. And then we have hybrids, which could be, it's usually a part electric part gas, and usually they work. So in town, when you're doing less than 60 kilometers an hour, it uses electricity. And then once you go over 60 kilometers an hour, the gas engine kicks in. Or the gas engine kicks in when the battery runs too low to operate the car. So those are considered hybrids. Okay, and but we have hybrids, straight electric, and like I said, the Volkswagen Taos that we have is not a hybrid, but it does when we stop at a stop sign or a red light, the car will shut off while the foot is on the brake, and then when your foot comes off the brake, the vehicle starts up again. Okay, so that's different than electric or hybrid. Hybrid is part gas, part electric. Maintenance, if you buy a new vehicle, there is less maintenance. So at one time, depending on the vehicle, actually not depending on the vehicle, one time every 5,000 kilometers, you had to have an oil change and the filter changed, oil filter. The Volkswagen Taos that we have now, it uses a special synthetic oil, and that vehicle can go close to 15,000 kilometers now without an oil change. So your first oil change is not until about 15,000 kilometers. Okay. So that's a lot. Most people don't drive that in a year. So now in one of those vehicles, you can go a year or longer, depending on how much you drive. If you want to drive 10,000 kilometers per year, you can go a year and a half before you need to get an oil change. Okay. So getting much, much better. Financing, usually if it's a new vehicle, you get a lower financing rate. Why? Because they want to move those vehicles. Those are the expensive vehicles. They don't want to keep them in the shop. The longer they keep them, the more money it costs them. So they want to get them out the door as quickly as possible. So sometimes they'll even have 0% financing. So you can finance through the dealership themselves, or you can finance through a bank. Usually it's cheaper depending on the financing that the company is offering. So if they have vehicles that are not moving very quickly, then they'll offer you a lower finance rate to get them out the door uh, faster. Okay. But you usually have to get approved before the financing occurs. So if you go to a bank or the dealership, they're going to do a credit check. So credit check will be they'll check your credit score, and your credit score tells them if you've been making your payments on if you've had a loan in the past or if you had Visas or MasterCard. So a lot of times what happens, especially to young people, when they go to buy a vehicle because they've never owned a credit card and they've never had a loan, they don't have a credit rating. So it's difficult for them to get a loan because banks don't know who they are, don't know if they pay the bills because they've never had any bills to pay. So in a lot of those cases, you will have to get a cosigner. So young people today would most likely ask a parent to cosign. Now the parent will have a credit history, so the banks can check the parent's credit history. And what happens then is the bank will say, okay, based on your parents' ability to pay, we'll give you the loan. And then if you stop paying on the loan, then your parents have to take over and they have to pay. Or whoever co-signs, could be a parent, could be a sibling, could be grandparent, could be a friend, whatever the case may be. But whoever is the co-signer will have to make the payments if you stop making the payments. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Okay, so maintenance, we've talked about that. You are less maintenance on new vehicles, usually. And then the legwork, once you've picked the vehicle you want, the dealership will take over from there and they will do all of the things that need to be done. So getting the vehicle license, getting a license plate put on the back of the vehicle, making sure the car is ready. So full tank of gas when you get there. So all of that stuff is taken care of and is usually, so if you buy the vehicle today, you probably won't pick it up today. Buy it today, and then you go back in a day or two. All the paperwork has been done. They've had time to go to the Service Ontario and get the license plate and so on, do all of that. You have time to call your insurance company, get insurance put on the vehicle because they won't let you take the vehicle until it's insured. Okay, but all that gets done, and usually within a day or two, and then you go back and pick up the vehicle. And at that point, it should be in a very clean condition, and so on. So everything has been done for you. Now, what about buying a used vehicle? Well, when you buy a used vehicle, uh, it's going to be less expensive. It's going to cost you less. Okay. And that's because the vehicle is older. And as we looked at yesterday, the vehicle will depreciate over time. So $64,000 vehicle after 5 years might only be worth 25,000. Now it's 5 years old. So you're buying a vehicle that's 5 years old, has been driven, maybe 100,000 kilometers on it. You don't know how the person who owned it drove it. So sometimes it's advantageous if you know the person owned the vehicle. So, for example, if you knew the person that was selling the vehicle in Sea Lookout was an elderly person, didn't drive it a lot, not reckless, then you're probably going to be getting a decent vehicle. But if you're buying a vehicle from someone who worked in a bush, young guy in mid 20s, late 20s, likes to party, that and likes to drive the vehicle fast and hard, then the vehicle is probably not going to be in the same condition and as the vehicle would be if it was an older person who took care of the vehicle. So, but sometimes you don't know because if you're buying it from someone, let's say in a different city, you might not know how it was driven. So it's very important that if you buy a used vehicle that you inspect it very carefully. Okay. So what I would suggest you do if you're buying a used vehicle is take the vehicle for a test drive, then take it to a garage and have a mechanic look over the vehicle to let you know if there are any glaring issues with the vehicle. They might look at it and say, okay, tie rod end has gone there, you got a ball joint gone there, there's this wrong here, there's that wrong there, and then that will set off some red flags. You know what? If I buy this in a couple of months, I might be putting a couple $1,000s of repairs into it. So it's a good idea to have it inspected, and you should definitely take it for a test drive first. It depreciates, so it's going to drop in value, so it's going to be worth less. And then a year after you've owned it, it's going to be worth even less again. Insurance rates will be probably cheaper on a used vehicle because the vehicle is not worth as much. So insurance is based on the value of the vehicle and the type of vehicle too, and the make and the model and so on. But it's mainly on the cost to repair or sorry, replace the vehicle if it were involved in an accident and were to be written off. How much would it cost to replace it? So, and a vehicle that's 5 years old would be less expensive to replace than one that's brand new. So your insurance rates will be lower. Choice, you you can't pick and choose the options you want because the vehicle is the vehicle that you're looking at. But there are a wide range of vehicles out there. Okay, so as long as you're not looking for perfection, um, so less choice. New cars can have a number of extra costs, so delivery, freight, pre-delivery expense, pre-delivery inspection, administration fee, dealer preparation. So, and again, since I did this a couple of years ago, there's probably more. So it keeps they keep t they keep adding more fees, but they don't seem to take any away. Some people say, the MSRP, the manufacturer suggested retail price, that's what some people call the sticker price or the base price. Or sorry, sticker price would be without the additional features added on. Fuel consumption, new vehicles probably have better fuel consumption. They're newer, and newer vehicles tend to do better, and the engine has got less wear and tear on it. Okay. So again, depreciation represents the estimated reduction in value of a vehicle over time. So let's look at an example. Sample problem 10.4 says a new car is purchased for $36,000. It depreciates at an average rate of 18% per year. What is the resale value after 7 years? So again, the formula is V equals P times 1 minus R to the power of N. Now, we don't expect you to memorize these formulas. These formulas on an assignment, if you're doing tests, they were given to you. So it's just a matter of knowing how to use the formula. So V is the resale value. So that's the value we are looking for. The MSRP will be the P value or the present value. R is the annual depreciation rate written as a decimal. Can be written as a decimal, and N is the age of the car in years. First step, there we go. Write down the formula, V equals P times 1 minus R to the power of N. Second step, do the substitutions. So I know that my P value, so here's the P value. I'll highlight for you. P value is there, 18% per year. That's my R value, and 7 years. That's the N value. So again, we should have written down given P equals, R equals, N equals. I kind of didn't do that here because I was running out of space and I didn't want to jump down to the next page, but we should have done that. Okay, just so that you know. So to do the substitutions, once the substitutions are done, then the next part is to do the calculation. So again, it's always beneficial to take your calculator out, depending on which one you're using, and go do the math. So we have bracket, so we have an operation inside of a bracket, we have an exponent, and we are multiplying. BEDMAS says do what's inside the bracket first. So if I go 1 minus 0.18, I get 0.82. Now I have to do the exponent, so exponent 7, and then I'm going to times that by 36,000. And I get 8794.27694. So when I round that to the nearest penny, nearest cent, I get 8,000, I put the dollar sign in there again, $8,974.28. And then because this is a word problem, we are going to state the answer. So the question says, what is the resale value after 7 years? The resale value of the car after 7 years is $8,974.28. So I'm going to unhighlight that now. So there you go. So 3 steps basically. Then the statement at the end. So let's call it 4 steps. Okay. Used cars have numerous costs in addition to the asking price as well. So safety standard certificate. So when you buy a used vehicle, it has to be safety. And what that means is a mechanic has to check it over and say that it is safe for that vehicle to be on the road and to be driven. If there are things wrong with the vehicle that make it unsafe to drive, then it won't pass the safety test until the repairs are made. So, as I said earlier, if you buy a vehicle, you buy a secondhand one, take it to the mechanic and have the mechanic do the safety. Cost maybe $100 or so. If it doesn't pass the safety, then you can say to the person selling it, don't want it unless you're going to fix those parts first. There's a drive clean emissions test that has to be done in vehicles as well to make sure that it meets a certain standard, and then see if there's an extended warranty. So, as I said, when you buy a new vehicle, you usually get a 3-year, 60,000 kilometer warranty, but you can buy an extended warranty up to 7 years and 140,000 kilometers, let's say. Well, if you sell the vehicle after 5 years, then there's 2 years left on the warranty. Sometimes that's transferable, sometimes it's not. So you'll have to check with the person selling the vehicle. 2 years left on the warranty, is that transferable to me? So if I buy it, do I get the 2-year warranty? If I do, then that might make it attractive. But if not, I might think, maybe not. Okay. So there's a number of things to consider when you're buying a used vehicle. So one of the things is fuel consumption. How much fuel does it use? If it burns a lot of fuel, then you might not want that vehicle. Okay, let's look at a sample problem 10.5. Determine the cost to drive each distance at the given fuel consumption rating and average cost of fuel. Okay, so 20,000 kilometers at 6.3%, sorry, 6.3 liters per 100 kilometers. And then it costs about $1.37.4 per liter. So again, set up a proportion. A proportion is when you have a fraction equal to a fraction, basically. So I put the L over Km on the left-hand side to let me know that on top is where we put the liters or the amount of fuel that's burned, and on the bottom is the distance traveled. So we know that 6.3 liters per means over, just like this. So that means 6.3 over 100. That's what this means. 6.3 over 100 is equal to, now we are trying to find the how much fuel we're going to use if we travel 20,000 kilometers. 20,000 goes on the bottom because that's for kilometers. Kilometers is at the bottom of the fraction or in the denominator. So it goes in the denominator here. And I usually pick the letter X as the variable. You can pick whatever you want, doesn't really matter. So now that we have the set up like so, so now the next part is to cross multiply. So cross multiply means we are going to go from, I always want the X to know on the left-hand side of the equation. I always cross multiply this way first. So 100 times X is 100X. And then 6.3 times 20,000. Look at your calculator. 6.3 times 20,000 is equal to 126,000. Now we always divide by what's in front of the X. So in this case here, in front of the X is 100. So I'm going to divide each side of the equation by 100. What do you do when solving equations? What if you do on one side of the equation, you must do on the other side. So the reason why I do this is because 100 divided by 100 is 1, and 1 times x is x. That's what we're solving for, x. Well, that's what I want. 126,000 divided by 100, so 100, works out to be 1,260. And then at the end, I put in the units over here as well. Last step. So to drive 20,000 kilometers, this vehicle was going to burn about 1,260 liters of fuel. Okay, so much going to cost. So the fuel cost is going to be the fuel consumed, which is what we just did. We are going to consume that amount of fuel, and the cost per liter is up here. That's where my cost per liter is. Okay. So now let's do the substitution. So we just determined that we are going to burn about 1,260 liters of fuel times the fuel consumption rating of 1.374. So now if I do 1,260 times 1.374, I'll get $1,731.24. And I'm going to come back over to here and turn the draw feature off. And in here, last step, I'm going to put in the $sign. And then because this is a word problem, I'm going to answer the question. It would cost $1,731.24 to drive 20,000 kilometers. Now, that is an estimate, okay? Because again, it depends on how fast, how slow you're driving, if there's any construction, and so on, okay? So now I'm going to get rid of all of these little marks so that when I save the file, they're not there, confusing people. So again, I'm going to put the $sign back in here. I'm going to keep an eye on the time here too. Okay, we got 10 minutes. The next one is essentially the same problem. So I'm not going to go through this one with you. It's on the screen right here. It's set up the exact same ways as the one we just did, exact same steps. So if you follow the steps in this one, and you'll notice, like, if you put them side by side, it's the exact same problem with some of the numbers changed. So now it's 9.8 over 100, and we're driving 28,750 kilometers. So cross multiply divide to get the amount of fuel that you are going to use or consume, and then multiply that by the 1.639 to give you the total cost. And there we go. It will cost you about $4,617.88 to drive 28,750 kilometers. Again, same problem, same steps each and every time. So every time I do one of these problems, I follow the exact same steps every single time. I don't waver, I don't change. I simply follow the same steps. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. So there's another sample problem that we'll get started. I don't know that we'll have time to finish it. 10.6 sample problem. Jamie drives to work every day from home. The one-way distance to work is 18 kilometers. Okay. Jamie's car has a fuel consumption rating of 7.5 liters per 100 kilometers. So what I'm going to do as I'm going through here, I'm going to highlight some things. Okay. So 18 kilometers, one-way distance to work. Okay. Oops. Fuel consumption rating of 7.5 liters per 100 kilometers. Average cost of fuel is $1.46.9 per liter. And there are 22 days of work. So Jamie works 22 days this month. Okay, 22 days, and he drives to work and back every day. So what is the total cost of fuel for Jamie's commute to work for the entire month? So how much is going to, again, this is how you would maybe create a budget. How much am I going to, if I wanted to know how much money I'm going to spend on gas per year, then this might be a way of coming up with a budget, for example. Okay, so let's go to red here. I just thought of this today. I thought I'd add this because it is a type of problem. It's a real world problem. It doesn't just ask you to do some calculations. So 18 kilometers. So one way is equal to 18 kilometers. Okay. So return is going to be 18 times 2. So one way would be with one word or two. One way trip would be 18 kilometers. A round trip would be 18 times 2, which would be 36 kilometers. Okay, so what's the 36 kilometers. So in a month, so 22 days, so 22 days would be 36 kilometers. That's to and from. That's to and from. So times 22 is equal to, let's do the calculation. So 36 times 22 would be 792 kilometers. 792 kilometers. So for the entire month, Jamie will travel a distance of, so let's write that here. Jamie will travel a distance of 792 kilometers during the month. Now, this is just for work as well. This is not going to be for personal. So if you're going to the grocery store, or you're going to a movie, whatever you're doing, this is just for work. Okay. What's the total cost? So now we have the same problem. We have the total distance, we have the cost per liter, and we have the liters per 100 kilometers. So now it's simply going to be the exact same problem we had here. So I'm just going to copy this because, again, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm not changing anything. It's just going to be a matter of now. So just make sure I have this. I'm just going to change the font. I'm just want to make sure I'm consistent. And then that's size 11. So now everything looks the same as it did up here, maybe? No, Cambria. Sorry. So I'm going to change that font to Cambria. Oops. Why is that not changing? That's, oh, let's go back to Cambria. That's the same as what's up here. Cambria. Okay. So now the fuel consumption rating was 7.5 liters. So we're going to change the 9.8 to 7.5. And we are going to be traveling a distance of 792 kilometers. So we're going to change that number to 792. So now we are right back to the second step up here. So now we have to cross multiply, then divide by 100. Cross multiply, divide by 100, and that will give you the amount of fuel that you are going to use or Jamie is going to use. And then what you will do is you will do the next part, copy and paste. So you're going to take these, do the exact same steps as here, take that, put it down there, and then finish working it out. We'll do that maybe tomorrow, finish working this problem out. And then you do the same thing all over again as we did here, but change the 7.5 to 6.8 and see how much money he would save, the difference between the two. Okay? So we'll take a look at that tomorrow. So the fuel consumption rating for vehicles, of course, owner tells part of the story, driving habits. Do you have a lead foot? Do you like to speed? Because if you speed, here is a fact for you. It says driving a car at a higher speed, decreases your fuel efficiency for the vehicle. So they've shown that if you drive if you, instead of driving 90 kilometers an hour, which is the speed limit, you drive 120, which if you get caught, you're going to get a speeding ticket. But if you drive 120 kilometers an hour, that decreases the fuel efficiency by 20%. So you're going to burn 20% more gas driving 120 than you would at 90 kilometers an hour. Okay, so that's something you need to keep in mind too as you're on the highway driving. If you can't afford the gas, don't speed. Okay, so that's as much time as we have for today. Thank you for participating, and I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. Bye for now.